The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classes. We keep grinding on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth, and we tuned in to Dr. Maat.
Peace and love, family. Welcome to another Truth to Power Talk with your sister, Dr. Maat. Thank you for joining another powerful discussion. And tonight, I have with me another powerful guest, Dr. Gina Paige. How are you tonight, Dr. Gina Paige?
I'm wonderful. I'm glad to be on the list of powerful people. So thank you for having me.
No problem, Doc. No problem. And thank you for all of the hard work that you've been doing. I've been a fan of African Ancestry since 2013, and I had your co-founder, Dr. Rick Kittles, on the platform about a month and a half ago, and I showed him my original kit that you all sent me with the certificate that said that my I took the Matro clan. Well, I only can take the Matro clan test, and I found out that my mitochondrial DNA was traced to the Bamaliki people of Cameroon. And so, yes. So I thank you for all of the hard work that the two of you are putting in. Family, take a moment out right now to thumb up this video. If you're watching on Facebook, head on over to Dr. Maat, find this video, thumb up the video. Also, family, share this video. Tonight, Dr. Paige and I are going to be discussing DNA. And a lot of people have questions about DNA. Is it a hoax? How does it work? What is DNA? So share this video. Share it is caring, and we want to get the information out there to the people. Also, family, if you have not subscribed to my platform, Dr. Maat, be sure to hit on over to YouTube. Subscribe to my platform. Hit the notification bell so that as soon as I go live, you will be notified. Also, family, there are some people contacting me. Dr. Maat, I missed one of the discussions. I missed a couple of discussions. I'm trying to catch up. Family, what I've done was created a playlist on my YouTube channel entitled Truth to Power Talk. So if you've missed some discussions, head on over to my channel, look for the Truth to Power Talk playlist to get caught up on any of the discussions that you've missed. All right, so Doc, I want to begin by reading your bio. All right, you have a beautiful bio that was sent on over to me by your assistant. Beautiful bio, okay? So says Dr. Gina Paige, co-founder and president of African Ancestry Incorporated, industry pioneer, speaker, and entrepreneur. And her country of origin is Nigeria, tribes Hausa and Fulani. Pioneer. In 2008, Dr. Gina Paige co-founded African Ancestry Incorporated, okay? And their website is africanancestry.com. And in doing so, pioneered a new way of tracing African lineages using genetics in a new marketplace for people of African descent looking to more accurately and reliably trace their roots. Paige travels the world helping people demystify their roots and inform on identities so they may better understand who they are by knowing where they come from or where they're from. All right, it says Paige has worked with and revealed the roots of the world's leading icons and entities, including Oprah Winfrey, John Legend, Chadwick Boseman, peace be upon his soul, Spike Lee, Condoleezza Rice, and the King family. Paige has served as speaker, presenter, and or partner to McDonald's, Capital One, the Walt Disney Company, Booz Allen Hamilton, Wells Fargo, the Wall Street Health Forum, New York Times Travel Show, United Healthcare, and dozens of community organizations and faith-based entities. She's often a go-to resource for African diaspora communities, including the embassies of Cameroon, Nigeria, and Ghana. The Year of Return 2019 event from Jamestown to Jamestown with the NAACP, Back to Africa Festival in Cape Coast, and various African tourism authorities and leaders. Paige has been featured in hundreds of media outlets, including The Breakfast Club, Hot 97 FM, Time Magazine, USA Today, 60 Minutes, News One Now with Roland Martin, HuffPost Live with Mark Lamont Hill, The Joe Madison Show, Sister Circle Live, Essence Magazine, The New York Times, The Tom Joyner Morning Show, Fox Business News, Reuters,
and Truth to Power.
And Truth to Power Talk with Dr.maat. And New York Times, Canal Media Company, Black Enterprise, Ebony, NPR, Metro Source Urban Radio, American Urban Radio Networks, thegrio.com and theroot.com, among many others. Her work is featured in PBS's Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates and African American Lives 1 and 2, and the African Channel, NBC's Who Do You Think You Are, CNN's Black in America series, and Sirius XM, where she created and served as co-host on African Ancestry Radio. From a lineage of entrepreneurs, Paige launched her first business at the age of 8, powerful, with a magazine, Purpose to raise money for family trips. She went on to start a pick-a-pack care packages as a Stanford University graduate, helping families stay connected with their children while away at school. Prior to forming AfricanAncestry.com, Paige was the founder and president of GPG Strategic Marketing Resources. Education, Paige resides in Washington, D.C., and holds a degree in economics from Stanford University and an MBA from the University of Michigan Ross School of Business. Paige was honored with an honorary doctor of philosophy from Global Old D Seminary University. Again, welcome, Dr. Paige, to the Truth to Power platform. I was thoroughly impressed, Doc, when I read your bio. I said, this sister has it going on with a powerful sister. But Doc, what I noticed in your bio is that you said, and you and I kind of talked about this briefly offline, you said that the purpose of you and Dr. Kittles, the purpose of you starting African Ancestry was so for folks to accurately trace their ancestry or their lineage. So what differentiates your company from, let's say, Ancestry.com or a 23andMe, or now I know that the National Geographic, they're doing DNA testing. So what would be the difference between African Ancestry and those companies?
Well, the difference can be summed up. The differences can be summed up by mission, purpose, and product. So our mission is to transform the way that we as Black people view ourselves and Africa. And we believe that one way to do that is by understanding where specifically in Africa we come from. Not that we're African, we know that. Not that we're some percentage African, we know that. Not that we come from West Africa, we know that. But the people and the places, are you Bamaleke like you from Cameroon or Mandinka from Senegal? That level of specificity stands apart in the industry. In terms of purpose, our goal is to help Black people thrive. The other companies in the industry aren't concerned with Black folks. They don't employ Black people. They don't have a substantial database of African lineages to give Black people informative answers about their Africanness. And they've bastardized our quest to know who we are by giving us this, well, not me, because I haven't done it, but by providing less than informative information. And then in terms of the actual product. So our company, as I mentioned, we tell you the specific present day country and tribe or ethnic group that you share ancestry with. We're able to do that, unlike others, because we compare you to the largest database of African lineages in the world. And what I mean is every company takes some part of your DNA and then compares it to that same part of DNA from people all over the world. So if you're European and you're searching for European answers, you want your DNA to be compared to as many European DNA samples as possible, right? You're an engineer. I don't have to tell you this.
Absolutely.
If you're looking for Filipino ancestry, you want your DNA to be compared to as much Filipino DNA as possible to have the best chance of finding a match. Well, we compare our customers' DNA to over 33,000 African lineages from across the continent, but specifically, we focused on West and Central Africa because that's where we came from before Jamaica, before Alabama, before New York or Brazil. We came from West and Central Africa. Our competitors that you mentioned, they don't even have 2,000 African samples. So do you want your DNA compared to 2,000 African samples, or do you want your DNA compared to over 33,000 African samples? And then the final difference is that we don't sell or share our customers' DNA. Period. We have not done that since 2003.
I need to drop a bomb for you right now, Dr. Paige. Let me drop a bomb for you. Hold on, Dr. Paige. All right, Dr. Paige, go ahead and continue.
Exactly. I mean, it's, and that is the bomb, right? That is the bomb. Because we all know the history of how our genetic information has been treated, how we've been treated genetically, physically, socially, educationally, financially, economically. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Politically, right.
Politically, right.
Right.
So we destroy the DNA. Once we get the answer, your DNA is gone, Dr. Maat. It's gone.
Wow.
And if you want us to go ahead.
They say that they get rid of it, but a lot of us question whether they do. Like they'll say, well, can we store it? Do we have your permission to store it? You may check yes, you may check no. But then, like you said, the question is, do they really discard it? And your partner, the last time when he came on my show, he said that because someone in the audience asked the same question. They said, well, what do you all do with the DNA? He said, we get rid of it. And he said, but with a lot of these other companies, they sell it. So he said, that's why they're able to give you a kit so cheap. They can give you a kit for $100 because they're making money on the back end,
You've paid them $100 to give you information that's irrelevant as far as your Africanness is concerned, and to make more money off of you into perpetuity. That's what you've paid that $100 for. Or, you can pay $2.99 roughly for our test, get information that you can share with every single person in your family, in your case, that comes from your grandmother or her mother.
Yes.
And know that your DNA is gone. So you've got something now that represents an entire lineage and your future legacies.
I mean, that's beautiful, Doc. And I cried when I got my DNA results back. I mean, it's one thing to know that someone in my lineage endured, the Middle Passage, and she came here, and she came actually through Charleston, South Carolina. My family's from Sumter County, South Carolina. So that person would have come through Charleston, and eventually they migrated up to Sumter, had my great-grandmother, my grandmother came to Baltimore, had my mother. So I'm in Baltimore now. But
right.
It was one thing to know, to think, or the fact, to think about it. But it was another thing to open up that envelope and to say, wow, this woman, she, it may have been someone that came right from the Bamaliki. Like she came through. It was, I don't know, was she snatched? What happened? You start thinking about things. And so it was bittersweet for me. I cried when I got my results. I was happy to know, but it was like, wow, like this is real. This stuff is real. This stuff really happened. I know we're far removed from it, but it happened. And so again, like I said, I got my results back, and it was bittersweet. But Doc, I want to ask you this. We're having a conversation about DNA, and a lot of people are familiar, I guess, with the generic definition or the basic definition, this DNA. Okay, so we know it's some material that we inherit from both parents. And so, 23 chromosomes from your mom, you get 23 chromosomes from your dad. These chromosomes are wrapped up in genes or whatever. Can we talk about like what is DNA? Can you kind of break it down a little bit better than I just did? But like, what
Look,
is
I'm learning from you. I was like, oh, is that what it is? Okay. So first, let me start by saying you did not read anything about science degrees in my bio. So the way I'm going to explain it is my understanding as, as a layperson whose last science class was in, 1983 or something.
Yes.
But I like to explain it this way. We each inherit 50% of our DNA from our mother and 50% from our father. So if your mother's yellow and your father's blue, then that makes you green. So you and I are green. Everybody who's listening to us and watching on YouTube and Facebook, we're all green. And this DNA all got mixed together. And 99.9% of everybody's DNA is the same. Mine is the same as yours. Yours is the same as your students. Theirs is the same as the provost. I mean, it's just because we're human. But in that 0.1%, you find all the differences. So there's a part of your DNA that determines your height or your weight or your, the shape of your nose or the amount of melanin you have in your skin or your hair texture. Those are all the differences. Well, part of that difference is our ancestry. And so the way we're able to use DNA to tell us about our ancestry is because there's a part of our DNA that we got from our mother that when it came together with our father, it didn't turn green. So all the other DNA turned green except for this one little part. And that's called mitochondrial DNA. So all of us we and our brothers and sisters, we have the same mitochondrial DNA as our mother. It's like a yellow dot. It stays yellow. She and her brothers and sisters got it from our grandmother. It didn't change. It stayed yellow. And she got it from her mother and her mother for hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years. That yellow dot doesn't change. And what's so fascinating to me about the yellow dot, it's maternally inherited, so it's only passed from mother to child, mother to child. Men don't pass it. But it is the energy of the cell. It provides our cells with energy. So our bodies would not function if it wasn't for mitochondrial DNA, because our cells wouldn't function. What we get from our mother only is what drives us as living beings. And that mtDNA, that mitochondrial DNA, we can trace all the way back to where? The motherland. And so I think that's what you need to know about DNA, is that DNA that you have in your body, and you can't even see it, is so minuscule. Out of 3 million pairs of DNA, we were able to identify the few that are shared by that same woman who came here in the belly of a slave ship. Now, no, we can't tell you her name. No, we can't give you her address. But now that you know that you're Bamileke, you can explore the traditions. You can explore the values and the cultural practices, and all of those things inform how we see ourselves and how we feel about ourselves. And it's all because of that energy engine in our DNA that we got from our mothers. And not to go on and make this a science class, but there's also DNA that men inherit from their fathers. And that's the Y chromosome. And that's the one thing that everybody knows, regardless of what kind of school you went to. It seems like everybody knows that there's an X and a Y, right?
Yes.
Well, the Y chromosome is inherited, is passed from father to son, and it doesn't change either. So if you're a man, like me and Dr. Maat, you have a yellow dot from your mother. but you also have a blue dot from your father. And so we can trace that paternal line, father to father to father to father, and figure out where that comes from. Now, that doesn't always go back to, neither of them always goes back to Africa. But when we look at the Y chromosome, 35 to 40% of the time, it doesn't go to Africa. It goes to Europe. And that's because the British, the Germans, the French, the Dutch, the Spaniards, the Portuguese, those men were fathering children with enslaved women. And so they gave those sons their European Y chromosome. And that's what got passed down. Whether today you look like me or you look like Wesley Snipes.
Right.
You could still have a European male ancestry, and 3 to 4 out of 10 Black men do.
Yeah, Dr. Kittles, the last time he was on the platform, he shared with us, he said that his Y chromosome went back to Europe, and he said he was disappointed about it when he got his results, but he said, because he thought his Y chromosome went back to Africa. And so, like you said, you look at him, you would think it went back to Africa, but I guess that's why we can't, you know how we look at things phenotypically and we make assumptions about people based on their phenotype. But with genetics allows you to look beneath that, to look at people on a biological level. And so I think that's what's fascinating, about DNA. So my next question, and you kind of sort of already answered it, it was, can DNA be used to trace ancestry? You just said yes. But how? So you go into, what's the process by which you all, trace this? So we know it can, but that was my next question. Can it? You said yes, but how? So what is the process, Dr. Paige?
So let's just talk about the maternal line. Okay. Let's stay with this yellow dot. So we use a test kit for you to collect your yellow dot, your mitochondrial DNA. You swab your cheeks with a swab. It's easy. There's no blood. You don't have to do a whole bunch of spitting and all that. You just rub your cheek and you send those swabs back to us confidentially. The lab then unlocks the code just of your yellow dot. We don't even process the majority of your DNA. They extract your DNA. They look at the yellow dot, and then they provide us with the code, the signature. It's almost like a genetic fingerprint of your yellow dot. Dr. Kittles then says, okay, I have Dr. Maat's yellow dot. Let me find other people in the world with the same yellow dot. So he looks at it and he says, okay, first of all, is it African? Is it Asian? Is it European? Because there is a particular signature that is shared by Europeans. There's a signature that's shared by Asians, blah, 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 blah. So once he determined that it was African, he then went into our African lineage database with thousands and thousands of yellow dots from Africans living there today. And he looks for a matching signature. When he finds a matching signature, you have to share maternal genetic ancestry with that person. Because remember, the yellow dot didn't change. That part of the DNA, mitochondrial DNA, does not change. So today, there's someone living in Cameroon whose family is Bamileke. You're in Baltimore. You each have the same yellow dot. Well, how'd you get it? You each got it from your mother, who got it from her mother, who got it from her mother, who got it from her mother. Ultimately, you got it from one woman. But somehow, one of that woman's children stayed in Cameroon, and another one got sent to South Carolina. And then those mothers had children, their daughters had children, and so on. So that's how it works. We compare a certain part of the signature of your DNA to that same type of signature from people all over the world to look for matches.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, Doc, what is, because when I was looking up DNA and studying it many years ago, I came across haplogroups. So you have like the mtDNA haplogroup, and then you have the Y chromosome haplogroup. I found out that my haplogroup is L2,
Mhm.
L2, which is in West Africa, but L2. And so, can you tell us what is a haplogroup? If you
I hate
define.
this question.
Oh,
I hate this question because it's the reason I hate this question is because haplogroups don't matter.
wow.
And we get so caught, people get caught up on what's my haplogroup, what's my haplogroup. And the reason they're caught up on that is because that's the only information that these other companies give you.
That's true. That's
And
true.
so you're trying to make sense of it because the how do I say that? I'll just I'll just be bland. The other companies that can advertise, the larger companies have made you think that there's some value there. But let me tell you about so haplogroups in general are groups of shared lineages. So they're individual lineages, right? We each have our own mtDNA, which represents a lineage. But then those individual lineages get grouped based on broader similarities into these scientific categories called haplogroups. It's a way for scientists to distinguish populations. So the white scientists that came up with this, they decided, let's give Africa, the cradle of civilization, the country with the continent with the most genetic diversity on the planet, let's call them haplogroup L. One haplogroup for the most diverse continent on the planet.
Mm.
And then they said, well, in Europe, we're going to have 10 haplogroups.
They sure do. I think IJK is a whole bunch of them.
And there's very little genetic
Diversity
diversity
in Europe.
in
Mhm.
Europe.
Mhm.
But they wanted to give themselves all these different groupings to make it seem like there's a sense of difference. But if you line up 10 Europeans, as I've been taught, again, I'm not a genetics researcher, I do not have a PhD in any science. As I've been taught, if you line up 10 Europeans, 5 of them are going to have the same yellow dot.
Mm.
So you don't know if the yellow dot looks like this, it's French. If the yellow dot looks like this, it's Italian, because you can see that same yellow dot across all the countries. But if you line up 10 Africans, 9 of them are going to be different.
Mm.
That's what I mean by genetic diversity. Each person's yellow dot will be different. So then I guess they just had to evolve the scientists into saying, okay, well, instead of L, we'll say L1, L2, and L3. And then they said, okay, well, now we're going to say L1A and L1B
Yep.
and
Yep.
it's just, so haplogroups don't mean anything. They can't tell you where exactly you come from based on that haplogroup. They're still just telling you that you're African, which is how we stand apart. We'll give you your haplogroup. We've basically been forced to give people the haplogroup because they see other companies doing it, so they want it. But it's far more informative to know that you're Familike from Cameroon than haplogroup L2, whatever.
Okay, and so you actually answered all my questions, because I said, well, what is a haplogroup? How are haplogroups determined? And so you said we're bundling all of these individual lineages. You said under, I guess, a broader context, right?
Right.
And so then I said, well, what information do haplogroups display? And you're saying really nothing. I mean, well, it'll tell you at least the region, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, it'll tell you that you're African.
okay.
But I can tell you that without you having to take a DNA test.
Absolutely.
You're African.
Absolutely, Doc. And so my next question was, and you've answered this, can DNA verify our ancestral homelands? Yes. And my next question after that says, can DNA verify historical events? Because there are some people now, Dr. Paige, who are saying things like the transatlantic slave trade never took place. I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's a bunch of foolery going on YouTube where you have people who are saying that the transatlantic slave trade didn't happen. There are folks who are saying that we are the Native Americans, that we didn't come from Africa. I'm looking at your facial expression, Doc. But I'm just telling you what's going on.
No, I know.
It's a bunch of people online. They're like, we're the original Native Americans. We didn't come from Africa. That story is bogus. We're indigenous to this land. So you got these folks, who are calling themselves the indigenous. I mean, sub-Saharan African people who were kidnapped and brought over here. Now you have folks saying, no, it didn't happen. That never happened. And we're indigenous to this land. That was a lie, that we came from Africa. And so can we use DNA to verify this stuff? Can we use DNA, Dr. Paige, to say, no, yeah, the transatlantic slave trade did happen. And here's the DNA evidence to substantiate that, or no, we're not indigenous to the Americas. And here's the DNA to verify that. So can we verify this stuff, using DNA?
I'm going to say, I don't know, but I'm going to qualify my I don't know. So
Okay.
I don't feel like I'm the right person to answer that question. But if, $50 were on the line, then I would say yes. What about the Clotilda?
Yes.
What you've got these wreckages. First of all, when it comes to slave trade didn't happen. So what did all those ships? What were they doing? If the slave trade didn't happen, they were just sailing bringing what here? If the slave trade didn't happen, then why are there? If we're indigenous to the North America and we didn't come here via enslavement, then why are there so many people living in South Carolina today who have retained the culture of Sierra Leone, which we know to be a country that farms rice? And these people were working the rice plantation. So, there's some historical facts that would say, how did they get here? How did we get here if we were indigenous to here? But I will say that, Africans were all over the globe. So of course there were Africans in America, but I don't know that is the source of the African diasporan experience today. I don't know how you can say that it was because we're the original Americans. But you know what this is to me? This is just a bigger identity conversation. So, if you believe that you are an indigenous American, you get to believe you are whoever, you get to be who you want to be. That's the beauty of identity. It's a constantly evolving narrative of self. You decide who you are. And so if you decided that you are one of the first Americans, that's cool. You can be that. But there are other people who believe the historical facts and want to know more about who they are, and having that African connection, regardless of when it happened, they have it now. And so now they can live their lives in a different and more fulfilling way.
Absolutely. And Doc, I'm sitting here thinking about the logs that were kept from the ships.
Mean, it's silly.
Yeah, exactly.
You said it was foolery. I mean, it's just silly.
It is, Doc. And I was sitting, like I said, I've been in museums. I've been in Baltimore. There's a plantation called the Charles Risley plantation. I went with my family years ago, and they showed you logs that were kept by the mistress of the house, where she had the names of the I would call them African captives. They had their names, and of course it was European names: Sam, Judy, Mary, names that they gave them. And she had like a Christmas list. and she went down what she was giving each one for Christmas. It may have been a pair of shoes, or it may have been a new dress, or something like that. But we have those logs. Then we had the logs that the captains and the crewmen kept when they were coming over. So we have the logs, we have the narratives. I mean, peace be upon her soul, Zora Neale Hurston, in the book Barracoon, and then they found the ship. They found the ship that she was talking about. So it's crazy to me, Doc, when I hear people say stuff like, oh, well, the transatlantic slave trade, that didn't happen. But then also, to say that we are, the indigenous people of this land, your partner, Dr. Rick Kittles, was saying, wait a minute, a lot of us who try, when we take DNA tests, we find out that we don't even have Native American DNA in us. We don't even have it. So a lot of us are running around saying things like my great grandfather was Cherokee, or my grandfather was barefoot, or whatever. And then you get your DNA results back, and you don't have any Native American ancestry in you.
It's crazy. And you know what? You'd be amazed at what we hear, right? So there are people who are pissed off when they don't get Native American results, because it just does not jive with their family folklore. But then we get people who are pissed when it comes back Native American. They're pissed. And then, so we used to have a joke in our office. Well, maybe you could talk to this part. I mean, we don't give names, but internally we're like, they should talk to this person. They could switch because they're pissed and they're happy. But then you have people who are upset because the answer is Europe. And then then you get people who are upset because it's not the place in Africa that they want it to be. They wanted it to be Senegal and not Nigeria or something like that. And one time in 17, almost 18 years, I had one person who was upset because it wasn't African. I mean, because it was African.
Wow.
He was upset because it was African. And that one just blew my mind. So, this identity stuff is so deep.
Yes.
It's just so deep how we view ourselves, how we've been socialized and conditioned to view ourselves, and then have these expectations of what's good and bad or better or less than, or it's sad. It's painful.
It is sad. It is very painful. I was actually speaking to one of my colleagues about this about a week ago. We talked about the identity crisis of Africans in America. And I said, we have an identity crisis. You got folks, I mean, it's sad. I know that Dr. Amos Wilson talks about that in his book, the falsification of African consciousness, and he digs into that. But we really do, we do have an identity crisis over here. And like you said, it's sad. It's disheartening. But I would bet my $50, because you say, if I had to bet $50, I would bet $50. And I would say that DNA to some degree could verify historical events, because at some point, all right, because you mentioned earlier that that I think 60% of the time the Y chromosome does go back to Africa. Okay. But you said about 30 to 40% of the time it goes back to Europe. So I'm in the DNA, and I don't know, I'm not a geneticist. I'm an electrical engineer, but I'm pretty certain, I'll bet $50 that within the DNA, you all can see when the Y chromosome of that European male was introduced into that person's DNA, right?
Here's the thing, and that's why I wouldn't answer, because I think we do need Rick on here or somebody. What I do know is we can't be specific about when it entered, because the margin of error is too wide for certain time frames. So we don't ever say, what we say with our results is that they're based on a period of the past 500 to 2,000 years. But we can't get specific to a time point, because it could swing, it could swing 1,000 years. So then how reliable is that
Yeah.
answer? So I just don't know, because of the speed or the rate at which DNA changes. I'm not sure how specific we could get to talk about near historical time frames. Now we can talk about longer ones, but I don't know in the near history how accurate we could be.
Okay, because in my mind, I was thinking.
But you're right.
I was thinking, okay, so, you know, if we're looking at or analyzing a person's DNA, could we see at what generation did this Y chromosome was introduced into the person's, I guess, genetic profile, or, you know. So I was just thinking that so you're saying that the margin of error is too wide to say exactly when.
Yeah. Okay. And, you know, you weren't even a person really until the Y chromosome entered. There's that part of it too. It's not like it was African and then it became European. It was always European, right? And then you were
inherited
produced.
Yeah, and then you were produced. Yeah. Okay. But that's
we're too analytical. We could analyze this. we got to do this again with a geneticist.
With a geneticist. Okay. And so you've already answered why you and Dr. Kittles established African Ancestry. What do you hope for? And I know time is winding down. I have about 10 minutes left with you. Family, share this show. Dr. Paige is dropping a lot of information about DNA and how we can use DNA to reconnect with our African ancestry. So family, take a moment out, share this show. If you haven't thumbed up the video, be sure to thumb up the video. If you have not subscribed to my channel, Dr. Maat, and you're watching on Facebook and even on YouTube, head on over, click the note, subscribe, and then hit the notification bell so that as soon as I go live, you will be notified, family. So I know time is winding down. I have about 10 minutes left with you, Dr. Paige. And so this is my question to you, my last question. What do you hope people will do with once they discover the DNA? I know you and I kind of already talked about learning the culture and kind of reconnecting. But aside from that, like what do you think that African people in the diaspora, even on the continent, when we find out where we're from, what sort of movement should take place? What, like, you know, I know that Marcus Garvey, you know, he had his Back to Africa movement and he wanted us to settle in Liberia. Do you think that we should, as Africans in the diaspora, do you think we should repatriate? Do you think we should just reconnect, build alliances? I know Dr. Amos Wilson always talks about, he used to talk about building a global political and economical and social Pan-African system that will empower Africans in the diaspora and on the continent. So what Dr. Paige, do you all hope to see happen once people open those envelopes and find out they're Bamaliki, or they find out they're Fulani, or they find out they're from the Ivory Coast? What do you hope will happen eventually?
All of the above. Really, I think that there's so many different possibilities, and there's so many of us that we really can do all those things. We can travel, we can invest, some of us can go and repatriate and invest our time, talents, and treasures, as some would say, on the continent. We can lobby and advocate here. For me, all of that, though, stems from a connection. And I think that that's what learning where in Africa you're from does ultimately, is it creates a connection. I'm now connected to people who live in Nigeria, who are Fulani, who are Hausa, who are Yoruba. Now I am motivated to break down the stereotypes that I've learned about those people, or learn something about those people if I never knew anything in the first place. So now there's no barriers between us. There's no us and them. I am you, you are me, and I understand who you are, you understand who I am. Now that the barriers are gone, the possibilities are limitless.
Mm.
And the whole reason that all of these nations outside of Africa were able to be built and thrive is because of disconnection.
Mm.
They disconnected us to build their nations. And with a reconnection, we can rebuild our nation. And once and you do all of those things you just mentioned in nation building, right?
Mm.
So I think we need to use the DNA to rebuild, to establish reconnections that allow us to build nations. And whatever whatever interest you have, whatever talents you have, then you use those and you follow those. Mine may not be political. Mine may be something cultural. Lots of people talk about, especially during this year of 2020, that they're going, they're leaving the US and they're
Yes.
relocating to Africa. Well, where are you going to go? And people ask me, do I want to move to Africa? Well, I would love to be able to, but my family's not going. And so I want to be with my family. So we all have our part to play. And if we each play our part, which we're not doing right now, everybody's not playing their part. If we each play our part, then we'll have a nation.
Mm. Doc, I was just sitting here thinking about what you said. I share your same sentiments. I would love to repatriate. But like you said, my mom is here, my father's here, my aunties, my uncles, my cousin, my life is here. And so I don't want to just get up and move. And then, it takes me 24 hours or 36 hours to get back over here if I want to visit or if something happens. But so
And
I
that's
share,
okay.
yeah,
You don't have to go. Somebody
yeah.
else is going to go, and that's good too.
Yeah, absolutely. But I love to visit. I love to visit. I was in Ghana the for 2019, the year of no return. So I was
Mm-hmm.
there last year. I was there from the end of May to the middle of June, and had an opportunity to visit Accra and Kumasi, Cape Coast, Takoradi and Sukunde, and go to the castles and visit the Kwame and Nkrumah
Mm-hmm.
site, and it was a beautiful experience, and it kind of destroyed a lot of myths or a
Yep.
lot of preconceived notions that I had about brothers and sisters on the continent, because you do hear things like they don't view you as them, and I'm not saying that that's not true, because I've heard some people who have
Yeah.
had some bad experiences with brothers and sisters on the continent, but you can have bad experiences with anybody, right? And
Right.
so, but when I went over there, I can honestly say that our Ghanaian brothers and sisters welcomed me, and I took my son Isaiah with me, but they welcomed us with open arms. And well, they kept trying to sell us stuff too while we were there. But not, and those Ghanaian folks are hustlers, man. They tried to hustle us a couple of times, but all in all, we enjoyed our experience in Ghana. But thank you so much, Dr. Paige, for coming on the platform. I appreciate again all the work that you're putting in. Like I said, when I read your bio, I said, "Whoo!" I said, "This sister is bad. She is bad." And so I do
Well,
appreciate all the work you're putting in, and I'm looking forward to just seeing the impact, that African ancestry is going to have on, Africans in the diaspora. And I know even Africans on the continent are taking the DNA test, and they're wondering. I know I've heard some Africans say, "Well, I'm Yoruba, and I get back my DNA test, and it says I'm from somewhere else," So I know that that's been kind of like an ongoing debate too. But I am again um, just anxious to see how African ancestry is going to impact, Africans in the diaspora, because you guys are growing. I see you guys are growing. And like I said, I've been keeping up with you for the past 7 years. I got my kid in 2013, and so I see that you guys are growing and growing and growing. And so I'm just, again, anxious to see what's going to come of it. I know it's going to be beautiful once we all reconnect and reestablish and begin to build with one another.
and that's happening. I want to say a couple things. I know we're closing, but first of all, thank you for reading my bio, and there's so many people that were instrumental in you being able to read that. You know, like, I don't run African Ancestry by myself. We have a whole team of people, and you know, every accomplishment that I've made has been because of my parents' investment in me and my family's investment in me, and the ancestors that have come before that make it possible for 2 Black folks to start a business that's related to Africa. When we started this company, Ancestry.com didn't exist. 23andMe didn't exist. So we've already had an impact. Anybody that went to those companies to find out where they're from in Africa was able to do that because of us. And so we've made an impact. Over 1 million people know an African country now that they didn't know because of us. They know that there are ethnic groups that exist because of us. So people are, you know, hell, the year of return. We had a role in that, not directly. We didn't create the year of return, but we've been talking about Africa and every day since 2003, and that has to have had an impact. So I agree with you. I'm anxious to see what else because we've only scratched the surface. We're a small company. We're not, you know, no one's going to buy us for $4.7 billion like they did Ancestry.com because we don't keep your DNA. That valuation was based in large part on all the folks listening who gave them their DNA.
Absolutely.
You know, we've only scratched the surface, and there's so much more we can do. We started these African Ancestry family reunions, which got sidelined by the pandemic. But that's the next thing for us, is to take people home, you know, and take them to the place they come from. So many people have never heard of Burkina Faso. But now they're going to go visit, and they're going to have a culturally immersive experience in that country. So I am grateful for that you read that bio, and that I've had the wherewithal to do the work that lives in that bio. And we are who we are because people like you have, one, taken the test and have spread the word.
Absolutely.
And so thank you so much for including us in your definition of what's powerful in the African diaspora.
Let's give it up for Dr. Paige.
Thank you so much.
Let's give it up. All right, so Doc, thank you so much for coming on. Peace and Black Power.
Let's combat and fight back with no threats. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classes. We keep grinding on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth, and we tuned in to Dr. Maat.